Hi guys,
Hey,
how are
Rachel.
you?
Good to see you.
So with this movie, I told the lovely directors I made the mistake of watching it at 12 o'clock last night in my apartment in New York.
Oh
Uh,
no.
Yes.
and I have a
So
real creepy
excited about
long,
this.
I have a real creepy long hallway.
Oh
And
no.
so I like shuffled my cat in my room and then turned all the lights off and ran as fast as I possibly could. Because it is such an interesting location for a Scream movie because New York apartments often feel like fortresses because they're hard to get into with like where the windows are in location to actual entrances and things like that. But you guys made it so that New York is such a character and so terrifying in the sense of like, yeah, Ghostface could be anywhere. It's New York. Uh, why first did you choose New York as a setting for this movie in particular, and how did that play into kind of like the arc of the Ghostface killings, as it were?
I mean, we chose New York. I grew up right outside of New York. New York's guy's favorite city in the world. William married a wonderful girl from New York, so we're all connected to the city in a real way. And it felt like such an interesting, different thing to do for this movie, especially as opposed to being in Woodsboro in five. So we
Mm-hmm.
loved that idea. And then once that idea came, it was like, oh, we could do the subway. Oh, we could do an apartment. We can do it's sort of you say it's a fortress. They're tough to get into. They're tough to get out of. And
Mm-hmm.
like loved that kind of idea. We can do something up high with verticality that you can't do in Woodsboro. So it sort of unlocked all of these different opportunities for us that we got really, really excited about.
Yeah, I do have to say my favorite part of this movie, and I like texted my friends because I was laughing out loud, was when Josh Sakara goes, "I got you," and in a New York apartment pulls out the like longest ladder I've
It was
possibly
just
seen.
great.
And I was like, "You have that in your home? Like this is New York. Why do you have a
Very
ladder like that?"
suspicious.
This ladder. But it is the way you guys played, especially in this movie with humor and the fear of Ghostface. Like that's part of the Scream franchise that we know and love. But I think it works so well with just like the levity because I'm thinking about Chad. I love when Chad survives and they're like, "Hey, Chad's fine." Like I like that level of like the comedy in it. And so when you are kind of making that balance as writers, where do you find the like the ebbs and flows of the funnier moments of a Scream movie versus the terrifying kills?
We do our best to find the balance on the page, but I mean, it goes all the way through production and then post, in the edit, dialing things up, dialing things down. I think for Jamie and I on five, one of the things we talked about was really bringing back the scare factor in a
Mm-hmm.
real way and just really making Ghostface terrifying again, like in the first couple of movies. And we don't like horror movies that are just grim and gritty and bloody and gory and just for their own sake. And we want it to be a roller coaster ride, like the DNA of the whole franchise. So we write what we want to see, and we like to have fun. We want the experience to be fun, and at the end of it, we want you to not feel down. We want you to kind of come out of the theater going, that was a fun ride. I really enjoyed it. And so you need a little bit of, you have to cut the sadness and the scariness with a little bit of levity, like you said. Those are the kinds of movies that I think we
Yeah.
like to watch. And so
Mm-hmm.
and this is the perfect franchise to continue, like our putting our tone into it. It really meshes well.
Yeah, and the humor I also think is a great. It lets the air out of the balloon a little bit, so you can start to build tension again. And we always want it to come from the character. These are funny, witty people, and so how they react to things should be in line with that, as opposed to sort of situational comedy.
Yeah, and I think it's very funny because in my last interview, they were like, "Oh, Scream 5 had a lot of Easter eggs, Scream 6 doesn't." And then they really quickly were like, "No, that's wrong. There's a whole theater of Easter eggs." But I saw your painting in the back and I specifically was like, "Yeah, I mean, a big Easter egg is Samara Weaving being in this movie and then the costume from Ready or Not also being in the background
Exactly.
of the movie." But it is kind of like there are so many like levels to a Scream movie because it is making fun of a slasher while being a slasher, and also you have to be afraid of Ghostface, even though people are saying things like, "Oh, legacy characters and franchise," like at you. What was your biggest fear after like the success of five, going into six, and knowing that there are people who are like, "Okay, Scream is back. This has to up the ante from five."
I don't know if fear. I think we were just really excited about it. It was one of those things where we love this franchise, and so being able to make five was a dream. But there's also that element of like, are we crazy? Is anyone gonna, we think people will care, but will anyone care? And you just don't know until the movie comes out and people see it and decide to spend their money and spend their 2 hours with it. And if you're nuts, and the fact that people embraced it and wanted to see a 6, I think going into this suddenly was incredibly energizing, because we were like, oh no, we love these characters and other people do too. We weren't wrong. We weren't wrong to try and bring Scream back, you know? So I think it was just more about how do we keep it interesting and fresh? How do we continue to tell, you know, a story that's worth telling with the sister story? And you know, it was sort of a celebration of all of it rather than, oh no, let's not. I don't think good stories or movies ever come out of a place of fear of, oh no, let's not fuck this up. I think they come out of passion.
The only fear I think that does exist is how do we make sure things don't get spoiled, right? As you're doing it. That's really, I think, where the fear, once the success of 5 happened and they allowed us to make a 6, right? Which is, because I'm with Jamie, I don't think you go into it with fear. It's how do you protect the fans from the people that want to ruin the experience and the fun? And, you know, because no matter how hard you try, you're out in the real world with locations and people taking long lens photographs and all of that stuff, and you want to try and protect that stuff.
And on this one,
that's where the fear lives. It's not in the creation of it; it's in the keeping all the fun stuff these guys came up with secret.
Yeah,
right. So
to that point, though, I'm a millennial, so I grew up with these movies. Like, through most of my childhood into teenage years, Scream movies were coming out. And so, like, as I remember Scary Movie, I was like, this is a Scream reference. Like, that kind of like ingrained in growing up in the 90s and 2000s. But to your point, I was like looking up, I was like, oh, right, they're talking about a lot of the Ghostface killers I haven't thought about since I was a teenager. Let me like look up just like to remind myself. And I didn't find a single spoiler about this. Granted, I watched it last night, so people would have been like, it was so-and-so, and I was terrified. I was like, I'm watching the movie. I just want to remind myself about the other Screams. But it is like a cultural phenomenon that people love it. And I think you guys did a great job of, while it is a millennial franchise, bringing in kind of Gen Z-ish tones and themes to it, so that it is going on to a new generation. Where do you want this franchise to go? Because like I said, it is near and dear to the millennials, but you guys helped bring it to Gen Z. Do you want to continue these stories so it is a generational thing and every generation has their Scream movies that they are like, yeah, I remember seeing these in theaters?
I mean, I think that, let me sort of answer the question in a different way, because we sort of don't talk about the future, because it's like, we don't like knock all the wood that we're even would be able to do it again. But I think that, you know, one of the things that, you know, we are huge fans. We're same age group, a little older. I wish I could call myself millennial. But the Scream movies are always in conversation with pop culture the year they're made. Like some people, sometimes you're trying to make a movie that's timeless. Scream movies are very much of their time, and I think that's one of the part of the secret sauce of it. And so I think the thing that's evergreen about it is there's always something different going on in culture. There's always something, you know, it's sort of, this movie talks a lot about sort of the online presence and how you can kind of get smeared online and reputationally sort of destroyed. Scream 5 was very much about toxic fandom. Scream 2 is talking about the OJ trial in 98. So it's like there's always a conversation, and that refresh, I think, keeps part of what's so interesting about Scream movies and how they can each be different and not get stale.
Yeah, I agree completely. I do hope that this franchise continues, because I've had friends come to my Halloween parties dressed as Billy Loomis, and like they're like, I love Scream. Yay. So I really loved Scream 6. And thank you guys so much for talking with me today. Hopefully other New Yorkers do not make my mistake and watch this at
I'm so excited that whenever a New Yorker watches it and likes it, it makes me so happy. So
have fun on the subway tonight.
Yeah, exactly right.
My subway light doesn't shut off, but I was like, you guys should have put a bodega cat in that bodega, because then that would not have happened.
And pets are difficult.
Well, never. By the way, unless you absolutely have to, they are really hard on set.
It's a bodega cat. Get an actual bodega cat. It would have just sat in
Bodega
the,
cat,
with
you
the
just
bread.
don't see it. It's the
Right.
bodega cat saw
He's there.
Ghostface coming in and was the first one.
Yeah,
to go,
first one out.
I'm getting out of here.
He's-
I'm going the other way.
They walked down
Good
the
luck.
street. You're like, what's this cat doing? And then you see Ghostface. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
you.
Thanks
Have a
so
great
much.
one.
Thank you.